Hello and welcome. In this lecture, we are going to have a look at the security constant and if we have got time, maybe high availability as well. So let's say if we have got a firewall and installed at the parameter of your organization and it is doing its job, it has got the nice firewall policies and it has got VPN functionality as well. And basically it is protecting your network. So let's say this is on the right side is the big bad internet and this one is your nice organization. And it is protecting the traffic that is coming outside, that is internet, towards your organization. Now there happens to be instances when let me just clear it and bring up the clear slide so that it is easier to understand that. So in large organizations, in large ISPs, there are instances when you have got number of customers and those customers, now one thing that you can do is that those customers are served through one physical firewall, or there could be instances that those customers might be required or they might be in the need to have their own firewalls. Now the one way to do that is that the customer bring in their own firewall and install it in your premises, in your ISP location or your data center. Or the other thing could be that you can give them separate firewalls, but that is really not a feasible solution. But what you can do is that you can provide them virtual firewalls within a physical firewall. Now there is another thing about virtual firewalling is that you can have a bare metal and you can install virtual firewall operating system on that bare metal. But right now what I'm talking about is that if you have got one CISCO ASA firewall and you want that this firewall should be able to serve multiple customers in a way that one customer should not interact with the other one. So what you can really do is that you can partition that firewall into multiple logical units. Each logical unit is known as a context. So it's just a fancy way of saying that you can assign a number of interfaces to one virtual firewall, the other set of interfaces to another virtual firewall, and the third set of interfaces, or maybe four set of interfaces, or maybe leftover interfaces to another set of virtual firewall. So really nothing difficult about it. It's just that it's a way to partition a firewall so that the interfaces is routing table or maybe NAT table, its firewall rules or VPN. In fact, each and everything that is related to a physical firewall gets separated in a virtual firewall, which we call as a context. Right. So what happens when you boot up a firewall? What really happens? You know, when the iOS boots up after it's completing its boot up sequence, it really looks at the hardware, that what hardware is going to interact with. So in case of contexts, which are the virtual firewalls, CONTEXTS, in case of context, what really happens is that when we create context, what ASA or CISCO firewalls do is that they really create an instance which we call as system configuration. And after that, when we create the context, and we assign it to some interfaces and NAT rules and firewall rules, each and everything that relates to that hardware and software goes into a file that is related to that particular context. For example, context number 1. Similarly, if we create another context, the system creates another file and saves all that parameters related to hardware, what are the interfaces, if we have got some firewall rules configured in it, NAT rules, each and everything that goes into context number 2, and so on and so forth. So when a customer asks you about the dedicated firewall, and if you have got only one ASA with you, you carve it up and you give it a set of interfaces, and you assign that security context to that particular customer with its own username, its own security policies, its own authentication methods, each and everything. And that particular customer, so for example, this one is customer A, he or she can manage it by themselves. Likewise, for other customers, you can carve it up into another piece. Now, how many security contexts are possible in one physical firewall? That really depends. That really depends on the particular platform that you are working on, and also the license. That is also a very important issue, that what is the license limitation for that security context. One other thing that I need to tell you about is that when we create a security context, if we have not created any security context, it's all fair. But once we create the security context, the system generates a default security context, which is known as admin context. Admin context, and it's quite logical and relevant to understand, because once we create the context, the firewall is kind of gets segregated into multiple virtual portions. So what if an administrator wants to control or maybe deassign an interface from one security context and reassign it into another one? Or maybe if he wants to change policies on the firewall related to security context. So to do that, the system creates an admin context, and that admin context is in fact you can say that is the default context or the root user that can manage all the contexts. Once the admin wants to go to a different context, he simply gives the command change to and that particular context name. And we're going to do it just in a little while. We're going to do the configuration, and I'm going to show you how we can do that. One other thing that I want to tell you about the security context is, you see, for timing, I was just talking about if we have got a number of customers that want to avail the services from a firewall in shape of dedicated firewall services. But what if our own organization or you as a security administrator, you want to have multiple firewalls, and the purpose could be to introduce redundancy and maybe resiliency in the network. So the one way is to spend the money and buy a new firewall, or the other way could be to segregate it, making virtual contexts. And why I'm saying is because let's say if we have got one firewall over here and we want to implement contexts in it. So one way to do that is that we create a security context A, and then we create a security context B. And we have got, let's say, a network over here which has got many servers and LAN users which is connected, which are connected with this one physical firewall and logically connected with this security context B. And we have got another network which is connected with another set of users which is being served by security context A. And on the WAN side, of course, we have got big bad internet, and likewise they are connected onto the security contexts. So this shape of contexting, the one which are like two parallel contexts, or maybe three or maybe four, just for the sake of discussion I've put on two security contexts. They are really called or known as in the shape of parallel security contexts, where they are traffic from one security context has got nothing to do with the other security context. The other form of that is if we have got a firewall, and we can really do that, and we have got a security context A, and what we can really do is that in some implementation of firewalling, what we do is that we put a firewall behind another firewall to provide maximum protection. For example, we are doing a firewall that is kind of protecting our network from one kind of services, and we have cascaded it with another firewall that is providing protection for another kind of services. And the reason could be that this firewall over here, it may not have the enough resources or the RAM or CPU power or maybe license limitation, that it may not have all of the enough resources to protect all of the services by itself. So we needed to have another firewall. And another thought that could be that if an intruder is coming in, he or she would really have to pass through these two firewalls, isn't it? So if that one is compromised, we'll still have some confidence in this firewall that we have got some good, nice set of rules and firewall policies that would still be able to protect us in case something happens with this firewall. So to implement this idea, this physical topology into a logical one, we create contexts and we cascade them. So the outside interface of context A will be connected with the inside interface of context B. So really from certification point of view, CISCO may not be asking you about this particular scenarios, but since I wanted to let you know about this concept, that you can create the multiple contexts, not only that they should be segregated, that is also one of the scenarios, but you can also cascade them just to implement higher levels of security. So now let's go ahead and see how we can implement security contexting on our ASA firewalls. So here's the topology that we are going to use for this lab, and the idea over here is that we have got a central ASA over here. So this will be your organization periphery, and we can consider that on the right side is the internet and on the left is our organization, or maybe the two customers, or maybe you can even consider this scenario as a firewall which is protecting different departments of a campus network. So for example, this could be an IT department, this could be a production department, and the IT engineers over here in IT department and the network engineers over here in production department, they request you, being the service provider, that they should have the privilege and the authority to manage their own firewall. So what you can do is that you can create multiple contexts in one firewall and assign them that particular context. So to do that, let me bring up the ASA interface and quickly see how we can configure it for multiple contexts. So this is the interface. The ASA has just been booted up and it has got the requisite version for operating system and the requisite licensing to support multiple contexts. Now at the moment, if I type in enable and the default password is nothing, just enter, and I type in show firewall, and if I type in question mark, it shows me that it's in router mode. The procedure to put this firewall, at the moment it is having single context. So to put it into multiple contexts, I need to go into configuration mode, and over there I will type in firewall, then the keyword is mode. I type in mode, and if I type in question mark, it shows me that what are the modes available, which is multiple, for multiple contexts, no confirm. You can assign this one as well. It will simply do it, and without any confirmation, simply put the firewall in that particular context or in that particular mode that we want to apply, and in single, which is the default mode that any ASA operates when you turn it on. So since we want to imply multiple contexts, we need to type in multiple, and once we do that, it says that these two warnings that the context will be changed and the configuration will be removed, and we also need to reboot the ASA firewall after this. So after that, I type in confirm, and it says that the convert the system configuration. I type in again yes, confirm it, and while it is being rebooted, let me just pause the video, and when all this process is done, I'll restart the video. So our firewall has completely booted up, and look over here, let me just show you one interesting thing, that since we have enabled it in multiple context modes, the firewall we have put in multiple context modes, look at this message. It says that admin context is required to get the interfaces. So it means that it has already done something about the context. And the other thing, interesting thing that you need to see is that, look at this. It's saying that output from config line 38 admin context admin. So it has created an admin context by itself, and it has also saved that admin context in that file, which we are gonna see in a while. So let's come on to the console part and let's type in enable and enter is the password. So over here I need to type in show context to see what are the contexts available, and at the moment we see that only admin context, when we put the firewall into multiple context mode, this admin context has been created. Now to create the context or virtual firewalls within a physical firewall, we need to go into the global configuration mode, and over there we need to type in context and then the name of the context, whatever we want to create, and that will be all. So I type in context ABC and I press in enter, and it says that it is creating a context ABC, and once it is done, we see that we see a change in the prompt. From config it has changed to CTX, which stands for context. Now to assign interfaces, let me just, if I type in question mark over here, it says that you can assign the interfaces or the IPS parameters, which is intrusion prevention system, or the config URL where it will save the I talked about the configuration file that contains the parameters regarding that particular context, or if you want to assign particular description for that. So to do that, to assign interfaces, let's just say, let's type in description. Let's say this is for our customer number 1, and we want to assign it interface. Let me just come over here and see which interface is assigned with our customer number 1. This one is interface number 1. So let's just say that interface gigabit Ethernet 1 has been assigned to customer number 1. So once that part is done, also let's try the config URL portion as well, if we want to assign a particular name for that. So once we do that, I type in the complete path, which is flash, and let's say we call it custom 1 and enter, and it is saying that it is creating a context with default config. So and this is the path in disk 0 and by this name. So if I type in show context now, we should see an admin context and the context that we have just created, which is over here. Likewise, if we want to create another context for our second customer, we can repeat the same process by typing in context, let's say XYZ, and assigning it maybe a description, and after that assigning it a particular interface, which in this case I believe it was gigabit Ethernet number 3 for this particular customer. So I type in gig 3, and likewise if I want to specify a particular name for the configuration file which will be read at the boot time, so that the ASA knows that what are the parameters and the interfaces and resources that we have allocated to that particular context. So I type in custom 2 for that particular context name, configuration file of that particular context. And now if I type in show context, we should be seeing 3 contexts. One is the default, which is the admin context. The other one is for customer number A, and the third one is for customer number B. Now when that part is done and we really want to see what it feels like to be in that particular context, what we can do is that we can type in the command, which is change to, and if let me just type it correctly, change to, and then the keyword is context. If you want to go to a particular context, if I type in question mark, it's not really showing me what are the contexts that have been created in this device, but if I type in ABC, it will take me to that particular context. which we see that the prompt has been changed from CISCO ASA, which is the default name of the ASA firewall, to CISCO ASA/ABC. Now it is saying that I am in that particular context of ABC. And now over here, if I type in, let's say, show and interfaces of this particular context, we should be seeing only one interface that we had assigned earlier, which was Gigabit Ethernet 1 to this particular context. Likewise, if I type in, say, change to context XYZ, we should be put into XYZ context, and over here, if I type in show interfaces, we should be seeing the interface number 3 and none other. So the administrator that have been assigned to these contexts, they will only be seeing their part of the device and the configuration and the physical resources and logical resources, each and everything. So what we can really do is that we can define AAA policies for those particular contexts, that when an administrator tries to get into the device, it should be authenticated by that particular context's AAA's model. And once that is done, they should be able to configure their portion of the device. So not much difficulty in there. You can practice it around on physical device or maybe on simulator. For example, over here I did this configuration on GNS3, and we have seen that how we can implement it. So do practice around with it, and I'll see you in the next video.